this is the type of project that I am doing, and this is the type of project that I am doing also, but in a different way. These are very different types of projects, and I wanted to talk about how to differentiate between the two and how to audit each of them so that you don't waste your time. But one of my questions is, if everybody says that you should start right now and then iterate fast and it doesn't really matter what you're doing, then what does it matter to actually do an audit? Also, with 9+ years of engineering experience, why do I still edit every single one of my projects before even getting started? And it all starts with understanding the difference between the two types of AI ideas. The first type of AI projects is internal AI tools. This is the type of things that I'm doing the most because I have different clients that are doing like commercial AI products. So for me, what's the most profitable right now is doing internal AI tools. I'm going to explain a little bit more how it works. In green here, this is what happens when working on a new AI tool. There are different phases, and it's important to understand those different phases in order to understand the trade-offs of what we are going into. And in blue here, this is what happens when we don't work on a specific tool. So the y-axis on this graph is actually three different things. So it's energy, effort, and earnings. So one small thing about the earnings, it's actually here, in this case, the opposite of the earnings, not the actual earnings. Meaning, what you're seeing here in the graph is the lower the thing is on the graph, the higher the earnings, right? For example, here, we would have high earnings, low energy, and low effort. So what I'm talking about here is whatever the problem is that you've been solving manually and that the internal tool is going to take care of. Let's take a very specific example for this one. Let's say I'm creating an AI tool that is going to take care of a video, analyze it, and then create everything that I need from in a marketing standpoint to promote it. Here's what's going to first happen if I don't create that specific tool. We're going to have that, right? It's going to be a steady state of the same time it takes to do that task every single time. It's going to take the exact same amount of effort, energy, and earnings. Because if, for example, it takes me like an hour to do that, and an hour for me is like a few $100s, then that's the cost of that specific task, right? Now let's see the trade-off with actually creating the tool. So we start here with the implementation of that tool. This is, of course, like what's going to take the most time and the most energy, right? So this would be phase one. Then the best thing to do when we have an internal tool is to actually use it, like in real time in the real world. Like doing tons of unit testing and validation is not going to be as powerful as actually testing the tool in real world conditions. So this is phase two, and as you can see, it takes a while. Like it takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort. Why is that? This is because there is going to be a lot of debugging at this point, and it's going to take a while to refine it and solve actual real problems that you're going to encounter. People underestimate that phase and they just think about the implementation, and then they think about like the reward, which is the thing being pretty much done and really being like leveraging your time. But that's not how it works. There is going to be a phase of you robustifying that tool and make sure that it is actually a tool that works all the time. Otherwise, if it's not something that is extremely reliable and easy to use, then you're just going to end up not using it. And if you think about it, that could be the worst case scenario, because then you will have lost the time of the implementation and go back to the steady state of just doing the thing manually. And obviously, everybody makes that mistake, and I did myself before. Usually that happens when you think that you have an idea about an AI in your mind, and it turns out to be a lot more complicated because the idea that you had was based on assumptions about the thing that you were doing that was going to be easy to actually implement. And in fact, it was easy to implement, but when you actually test it in the real world, then it turns out to be quite a lot more difficult, because you're going to encounter problems that are just very complicated. And it turns out to be extremely complicated to solve those problems and takes a lot more energy than you anticipated. And once you're done with the second phase, then you enter the leverage phase. Why do I call it the leverage phase? Because this is the point where you're going to leverage your time in a way that is going to be disproportionate. Because this is going to go down to zero. Everything that was costly that went into doing that task is actually going to go down to zero. And a lot of people never actually get to that phase because they go to phase 2 and they realize that there are things that they need to work on and then they give up. And the conclusion is, well, internal tools are not really good. And it's not that they are not really good, it's that you underestimated the task. Because when you have an internal tool that actually works, like the return on your investment is going to be 10x. It's a lot more than most people think. But in order for that to happen, you need to make sure that this is big enough. So one way to think about it is the thing that you really need to be careful of when you're thinking about the trade-offs of doing your own internal tool, the thing that you need to audit for is that blue line. Is this high enough? Meaning, is this costly enough? If it's really low, then it's really unlikely that the time it's going to take, the effort, the energy, and everything is going to be worth it. Now, what is the difference between that and a commercial AI product? Meaning something that you actually want to use in order to sell it to people so that they actually use it. And that could be the basis for an actual company like a startup or something like that. The difference for a startup is that in order for it to be successful, you need a lot of time. And why do you need a lot of time? Because the success is exponential. And a lot of people don't know what that means, right? Because a lot of people think that exponential is good. And in fact, this is not what it is. The opposite of exponential is linear when we talk in the real world. And what is linear? It's that. That is linear. That means you work a little bit on this and then you get a little bit of success. Then you work a little bit more, and then you get a little bit more success, and so on and so forth. Now, something very important to understand is for an exponential, before you get to that point, linear growth actually gives you more success than exponential growth. Most people don't understand that part. So that's why when people say exponential is better, well, it's better after a while. It's not better at first. And the reason for that is it actually takes a while before understanding the actual needs of the users, actually what people are responding to in your product. And all of this usually is the test that the company is doing, collecting data about the user's behavior in order to make the product better so that it fits an actual need. And the goal to that entire period is to get to a product market fit. Because once you have a product market fit, what's needed then is marketing. Why? Because you know that people want your product. So now you can scale, and that's how you get to an exponential curve that is better than a linear curve. But the thing is, you need to be very careful about one specific thing if you're going to go that route. Before I explain how it works, if you're watching this, you probably want to create your own AI. And if you want to do this, I know that it can be tough, especially if you're non-technical and you're a beginner. So that's the reason why I created a free online course. You can click on the link in the description to get it. What you need to be careful of is having a moat. This is the type of thing that is especially important now that AI can do a lot of stuff, right? Because what it is just a barrier of entry. It needs to be very strong because what it could be here is just experience. So let's say, for example, your idea is to create a simulation that is going to train salespeople, for example. Well, if you're a salesman, then this idea might be very good in terms of barrier of entry because this is something that other people are not going to be able to replicate easily because you have certain opinions. And you want to train people like the AI that is going to simulate a training, you want to train them in a very specific way. And that way is probably very different from the good practices that you can get from ChatGPT, let's say. And as long as those are pretty strongly opinionated and that most people don't agree with that, then it's not going to be easily replicatable. So that's one way to have a strong barrier of entry. Just have a very specific knowledge about a very specific field. And the reason why it's very, very strong as a barrier of entry is because people that usually the people that are doing that are people that are programmers, and they don't actually know, or they underestimate how difficult that part of building a product is. This is the very complicated part. It's not just like creating a wrapper around ChatGPT to make it like to create a simulation. The actual difficult part of doing something like that is not the technical thing, it's actually getting that type of insider knowledge that you have only when you're actually like an expert at this specific field. So that was one example. A different example is just data. If you have a lot of data about a specific field, then people are not going to be able to replicate that because they need the data. And if that data is not easy to get, then they are not going to be able to replicate what you're doing, plain and simple. Because here is the thing, right? Like a lot of people are telling me, well, if you are using ChatGPT under the hood or whatever the large language model is, and then you're using it to do what you, I don't know, like training for a salesman or something like that, then ChatGPT is going to get your data and it's going to train the AI so that it's going to make your app completely useless, right? And that is true to some extent, but that's not true if it's opinionated, right? Like not everybody is the same. Not every coach is like teaching the same way. Not everybody agrees on the best practices and how to do this. So as long as what you're doing is opinionated, then you're protected against AI. And it has nothing to do with how good the AI is. This is not the problem. It's not the problem of how good the AI is. It's not a performance problem. It's a tool problem. Like they are not trying to solve that problem. They're trying to make the tool more powerful. And that's not going to make it more or less opinionated in one way or the other. So that's why this is a strong moat. Now this is just a very high level view of how to audit different types of projects. Now obviously there is a lot more to it, but I don't want this video to be 4 hours long, so that's where I'm gonna stop. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.